Hello and welcome to Africa Today. I am Esther Mokwariola. Struggling with the side effects of a system that rarely works for society, Africa is often described as the least developed region in the world, where the gift of knowledge and the bliss of ignorance readily presents the good, the bad, and the uneducated. According to a latest world ranking, only 10 universities in Africa presently meet up with global standards, out of which 5 are in South Africa, 4 in Egypt, 1 in Uganda, and none in Nigeria, where lecture halls and school gates were recently shut down across the country. And so we ask, what are your thoughts on the latest developments in Nigeria's education sector, where the Academic Staff Union of Universities have embarked on an indefinite strike? You can join the conversation and share your thoughts with us on Twitter at TVC News NG. We take a report, and Africa Today will continue. Welcome on board.
Education is the bedrock of every society, and no nation can achieve meaningful growth if the welfare of lecturers is not taken seriously. The Academic Staff Union of Universities demands that the issue of non-academic earned allowance and the non-release of funds needed to revitalize universities across Nigeria be addressed.
Universities were paying as less as 70%, 60% of their salaries. And that was affecting their welfare and their well-being. We had state universities where salaries were not being paid at all. Our members in those universities were not happy. You will recall the case of Lautech. Lautech's case has been on for almost a year now.
At the University of Lagos, lecturers were seen enlightening the students and colleagues on the need to comply with the directive of the national body. At the institution's multipurpose hall, some lecturers were seen holding a conference. Not long after, some lecturers forced their way into the venue and declared the conference closed.
By the power of our union and our collective struggle, this is the end of this jamboree. Good night, everybody.
The chairman ASUU Unilag chapter also spoke on the earned academic allowance.
Our union has just declared a comprehensive, indefinite and total strike action. Being insincere, they have refused to pay our earned academic allowance. They have refused to pay the lecturers and laboring every day. They have paid fractional salary. Since December 2015, many of our universities, including University of Lagos, have been getting fractional salary. The same thing with our state university. As a matter of fact, our state governors have turned state university to a constituency project. Even if the federal government keep on opening federal universities where they are not funding the existing one. This among several other reasons.
Another lecturer decried the declining standard of education while emphasizing the need for universities to be revitalized.
Not even ASUU that is demanding for 1.3 trillion for revitalization of public university education in Nigeria, because we have to put these issues in perspective.
Senegal and South Africa are countries on the continent where so much premium is placed in education. ASUU members want the Nigerian government to emulate such countries.
Welcome back. Nigeria's education sector suffers another setback following the latest industrial action by the Academic Staff Union of Universities, a trend that looks to become a regular feature in the school calendar. Major unresolved issues with the federal government includes conditions of service, non-implementation of the earned academic allowance, funding of higher institutions of learning, and the non-implementation of other agreements. Joining me in the studio on Africa Today, I have Dr. Jide Johnson, political analyst and deputy provost, Nigerian Institute of Journalism in Lagos, Nigeria. And on Skype, I have Dr. Sylvester Odion Ahaine, associate professor, political science, Lagos State University in Nigeria. Good to have you, gentlemen, on the program.
It's a pleasure to be with you, Esther, and to have Prof with us on Skype.
Great, fantastic. Now, let me begin with you.
Skype too.
Let me begin with you now, Dr. Jide. Now, these issues, this is not the first time.
Yeah.
It has been there since 2009, and we seem not to have a headway. Now, I'm really concerned. Why does it really look like there is no end to this perennial issue in our education sector?
Well,
I think that there's a need for us to bring this issue to an end. There's none of us in my generation that did not experience ASUU strike. We thought that by the time our children are now going to university, they won't experience what we experienced, because some of us are at cost to spend 5, 6 years for a course of 4 years, and some had to spend 7, 8 years for a course of 5 years because of ASUU strike. Because you know, when 2 elephant fights, it is the grass and the herbs that suffers, and it is the student that bears the brunt of it. And we felt that, well, that was under military regime, that under democratic dispensation, and 17 years under democratic dispensation, 18 years under democratic dispensation to be precise, we thought we would have gone past this stage in which we will shut the gate of research institution. First and foremost, university system are research institutions, and development is tied to research. So every time you close the university system, you are shutting your doors to development, and that's the wider implication of this strike, and that's the perspective with which I'm going to look at this issue of this strike, because we have truncated development over the years by shutting down the university system.
Mr. Akainde, I believe you just heard Dr. Jide's position on this. Now, if this is going to shut down doors of development, aren't you concerned now that this is going to be something well beyond out of control?
There's nothing to fear about being the strike action being out of control. To take a cue from my colleague there, I think that it shows that Nigeria lacks, a philosophy of development and a philosophy of nation building. Education is regarded in Asian countries as the Eastern strategy, whereby you see a country like South Korea spending as much as 60% of public expenditure on education. And so when ASUU has been in the forefront of raising the level of scholarship in this country, and the cry for adequate funding of education in this country. Now, the needs assessment which we did as far back as since 2009 up to the memorandum of understanding we entered into with the government in 2012, established that we will need about 1.3 trillion to revitalize infrastructures, equip our universities to standard levels in which they can compete with their peers outside of the country. And so when you look at the totality of all of these issues, we are concerned about the future of this country, we are concerned about development, and this cannot be seen as something spiraling out of control.
But how can we keep up with this, Dr. Sylvester? Because these are young ones who are being kept at home for a long period of time. We do not know how long this strike would be, because according to ASUU, it is an indefinite strike. So how long can the students keep up with this trend that more or less seems to be normal in our education sector?
I think that what is not of interest is the inclination for us to prize, the comfort of our children momentarily above, the future of the country. We are talking about the future of the country, not about the moment. And so we're actually trying to account for the future of our children, to ensure a better future for them, not about pricing, their momentary interest outside of the national interest, and future development of the country.
Well, wouldn't it be safe to say that there could be a better way to resolve this than strike?
Well, as you know, ASUU has never been allergic to dialogue. We have always dialogued, and we have always engaged, of course, the government. And there are indications that the government is again willing to discuss. But of course, we are open to discussion. The bottom line is what will come out of the discussion. We asked for 1.3 trillion as far back as 2012, and we have only gotten 200 billion naira out of that total. And so there has not been any symbolic or significant step taken to reassure us that they meant well for the educational system in this country. Not when all their children, of course, are in schools abroad.
Dr. Jide, what would you have to say?
Yes, ASUU has a legitimate right to require government to fund the educational sector. There's no doubt about that. But if you look in terms of timing, this present time, I was reading what the Minister of Labour and Productivity said, that government will need about 284 billion to meet the needs assessment. And if the economy is under a recession, and how could government meet up with such responsibility? There's no doubt that in terms of educational policy, there's no clear-cut policy, both at the state and federal level, because if you look at it, I started on the point that education is tied to development. It's tied to development in the sense that your educational institution should be tied to generating ideas that will bring about turnaround for your economy, all this funding which we are talking about. Now, if our research institutions have come up with ideas and innovation, they will generate the money. And this issue of ASUU or no ASUU takes it to the issue of restructuring. Why should, for instance, a university in Borno State and the same thing with a university in Lagos State or university in Jigawa State, you see, because we need to, you see, over-centralization of authority, over-centralization of issues tends to create problem, because each university has its own peculiar needs. But the moment we tie everything together to the center, you know, because we call for restructuring, and when it comes to negotiation, we want a unitary approach that, you know, we should all go to the federal government and federal government should take care of it. And that's the problem, because each university should be independent of the center. Each university should be self-sustaining. And if university cannot sustain themselves, then the issue of restructuring which you are talking about, we shouldn't even talk about it, because that should be the it. Because federal government, the reality of the matter, if we think that we'll continue with what we had in the 60s, when there were 5 universities, when there were 4 universities, now you have 40 federal universities, 44 federal universities, 40 state universities. Now, if 84 federal institutions at university level, minus the polytechnics, minus the colleges of education, minus technical schools, minus unity schools, minus secondary schools. Now, when you put into the front burner, there's no way, that is the truth of the matter, there's no way federal government will be able to meet up with the needs.
All right, let me hold your thoughts for now. We need to go on a very quick break. You're watching Africa Today. We have more discussions in a bit. Stay with us. Welcome back. According to reports, Nigerian budget allocation to education sector since 2011 has hovered around 11%, as against 26% recommended by the United Nations Education, Social and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, for developing countries. Now, in recent years, countries like Senegal, Ivory Coast have met and gone beyond this recommendation, while incessant agitation and demands by academic and non-academic staff continues to keep Nigerian students out of learning for months. Now, Dr. Akaine, let's look at this matter very critically. The Nigerian Finance Ministry has come out to say that the country is battling a recession and is working round the clock to get out of it. So would you say now these issues raised by the union isn't quite sensitive enough to what the country really is battling right now?
Well, I think I was going to respond totally to the viewpoints of my opponents who were talking about restructuring. I think the first point to make is that when it comes to remunerating federal officials or public officials in government, in political positions, people don't talk about recession. That when it comes to fundamentally funding a sector that is fundamental to the future of this country, people talk about recession. They should tell us whether ASUU spent the over about $445 billion realized from oil sales within the period Jonathan and Yar'Adua were in power, up to 2015 when they handed over, whether ASUU expended the money or wasted that money. That is what the government should tell us. I think the point is very clear. We can't turn logic, on its head. Like this country has enough money if expedition, well spent, prudently spent, can fund education at all levels.
So you were saying now that restructuring might be the way out of this. Am I correct?
Yeah, going to the issue of restructuring. My colleague has forgotten that what you have in the country now, you have a system people regard as unitary. You have an overbearing federal system. And of course, even in functional federal systems, you have to have what you call minimum standard. Minimum standard that should be the basis, for national development, which other states, to the federation can, of course, follow. That does not mean that there should be no differentiation. But we are yet to even get to the point of restructuring. if and when the country is properly restructured, these issues will not arise anyway.
Quite a salient point there by Dr. Akaine. But let's look at the issue of privatization. Do you think perhaps it might, solve this seemingly unending matter?
You see, I don't know anywhere in the world that education is cheap. And going to college, Obama went to college by collecting loans, by assessing loans to go, student loans to go to college. And I think that we need to address this issue. Because the university should be able to generate funding, should be able to generate funds that should be able to fund its program. And a situation whereby the fees that are collected, I think government needs to allow school system to run, instance, determines the admission policy, not run by JAM, determines the fee they will collect. Are you with me? Determines the fee they will collect and the fees they will charge for their various responsibility. I don't know whether Harvard is funded by government. I don't know whether Cambridge is funded by government. But that
will make the institution, that will make a school in that tertiary institution a bit expensive for a majority of people, because right now private institutions, that's private universities, are a bit expensive. So if it's now go by what you say,
if you were to send,
it might not be very affordable for the common man.
If you are to send your daughter, if you are to send your daughter, I will allow you, sir. Just give me a minute. If you are to send your daughter to go to school abroad, is it cheap? I want anybody comparatively. Let's compare the fees across board. Education is not cheap. And if you want to subsidize the fee and want to put all the burden on government, we are still paying lip service. 10 years down the line, we'll still have this strike. 20 years down the line, we'll still have this strike. Because government alone, once and for all, we need to face the reality. We need to face. A prof said they've done need assessment. The university have need. There's no doubt about that. I am not totally against what ASUU is clamoring for. What I'm saying is that there's the need for us to sit down and look at, can government afford to do this now?
Dr. Haine, I think you wanted to chip in.
Yes, I think what I'm hearing is a very reactionary position. But I think the point to make is that when you are comparing Nigeria with London, you are comparing Nigeria with Britain. I'm not sure you understand the economic history and development of these countries. In Africa today, there is nothing you call indigenous capital. Indigenous capital. So when you are expecting that in countries where the state appropriates over 99% of the resources of that country, and that individuals should not pay for education, then you are getting it wrong. You are getting it wrong because resources of the country is concentrated in the central government, and therefore, even that resources is not resources that comes from productive activities, but it comes from what we call, rentier services. Because Nigeria, for instance, is a rentier state, and all its resources come from crude oil exploitation. It does not contribute anything to it at the end of the day. And you are therefore asking poor people in this country to pay for education where government is misappropriating God-given resources that we have in this country.
So you still maintain that the government should own up to responsibility here, am I correct? You still want the government to take up the responsibility of maintaining the institutions. But in a likelihood where these things continue on end, what would you think might be the best option? Because we're going to have another government, perhaps in 2019. So if another government comes, do we have the same problem again at hand? What is the best way out of this?
Let me come immediately. Most of when we make demand at the level of ASUU, we also provide solutions. People forget that the third fund that all universities are enjoying today, it was ASUU that gave that formula to the federal government of Nigeria. Education tax fund and all of that were all articulated by ASUU in How to Save Nigeria, a small document as far back as the early 80s. And they have been following that, and it has yielded fruit. We have always pointed the way as to how education can be properly funded in this country. But because you have a government that is not committed to education, that is not committed to development, but that whose officials are largely interested in primitive accumulation of resources in this country, then that is why we are where we are today. That's the point.
All right, now, so Dr. Jide, I cannot really say much about this matter, but how can we, the education sector in Nigeria or in Africa, so to speak, be elevated from the way it has been over the years? Because right now, Nigeria's education system cannot be rated among the likes of Uganda, South Africa, Egypt. How can we elevate the standard.
What's the total number of universities in Uganda? What is the total number of universities in South Africa? Now, Prof talking on the other hand is a professor of political science and in public administration. You can only make science of you can only make science of politics by comparing two administration together. If you look at the population, like I said, if you look at the total number of universities we have in Nigeria and the population of students in Nigeria, you can't compare that if you are using 1960, 1970, 1980, or 1990 as the yardstick. We can't use that because we want to bring about a change, because the issues that ASUU have raised were issues that were raised in 2009, were issues that were raised in 2013, were issues that were raised in 1990, issues raised in 1991, issues raised in the 80s. So how do we solve this problem? How do we come out of this quagmire that will shut down our educational system? Because the moment you shut down the educational system, you have shut development. You have shut development. Technology changes at every second. Now, we are closing down our educational system. Others are continuing. They are doing their research. They are doing their lectures. They are doing what they are supposed to do. But we close. You can't redeem time. There's one thing that you can never redeem, and that's time. Every time that you have lost, you can never regain it back. Now, if you have to calculate the number of years, school years we have lost in the last 20 years for us to strike, as a result of government not being able to meet the need, you will know that we've lost close to more than 2 years in terms of academics. There are some schools that have not recovered till date in terms of having normalized academic structure. And how do we solve the problem? And that's my position. I'm not against what ASUU said, but how do we solve this problem that it does not become a recurrent feature?
Right, Dr. Akaine, what is the way out of this? Now, don't you think perhaps learning institutions like this one, like universities, can, think of creating how to sustain themselves without relying on the government, don't you think?
Yes, to talk about universities sustaining themselves, that is totally not out of the option. But you have to understand this point in the context of the Nigerian economy. I have told you that you have a statist economy in this country, where the government holds every resources that comes to this country. And so to that extent, they all need a responsibility, of course, to fund education. We are, like you said, we have not even met the 26% UNESCO threshold in this country. So let them do the funding. And once you fund the education properly well, we can generate knowledge that can themselves, of course, generate capital for this country. All right. That is the point.
All right, let's leave it at that for now because of time. But we'd like to thank you, Dr. Odion Akaine, Associate Professor of Political Science, Lagos State University in Nigeria. We appreciate analysis on the program. And Dr. Jide Johnson, a political analyst and Deputy Provost, Nigerian Institute of Journalism in Lagos, Nigeria.
It's a pleasure to be with
Thanks
you
a lot.
and to be with Dr. Odion. It's nice.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, home to some of the most promising nations of the world, the low standard of education in Africa remains a potential setback requiring a paradigm shift, policy upgrade, and the political will to commit more resources in closing the gap between demand and delivery. Knowing that no nation can grow beyond the level of her enlightenment, policymakers and key players in Nigeria must urgently rise to the occasion, address the issues and resolve the disputes, because education holds the key to national transformation. And that is our package for today. But don't forget to join the conversation, as usual, on Twitter at TVC News NG, and also follow me for updates around Africa at Esther TVC News. Until the next one, I am Esther Amokwariola, and always remember, change starts with you.